These are the 8 wildcard players coming into this NBA season. And by wildcard, I mean true swing factor guys. Players who could completely change their team's season depending on just how well they play. If they're great, their team could take off. But if they struggle, things could fall apart really quickly. Now, these aren't ranked in any particular order, but the first wildcard player I want to talk about is Flagg. There's a ton of names from Dallas that I honestly could have gone with here. Kyrie Irving, Anthony Davis, D'Angelo Russell, or even Klay Thompson. All of them have legitimate wildcard cases. But the reason I ended up talking about Flagg and not the other guys is because he has more nuance. Kyrie and AD are wildcards pretty much solely because of health, which isn't that interesting to break down. D'Lo just needs a bounce back year after one of the worst seasons of his career, and for Klay Thompson, he's kind of in the middle of both of those categories. But for his wildcard status comes from on-court variables that could truly swing Dallas's ceiling this season. There are 3 main things that will define his impact: how quickly he adjusts to NBA level ball handling, how good defensively he is right out of the gates, and whether he can become a reliable 3-point shooter in year 1, especially on a team that doesn't have a lot of floor spacing. Starting with the ball handling. With Kyrie Irving out to start the year, Flagg is going to see a lot of minutes at the point guard spot. Dallas will be relying on shared creation between D'Angelo Russell, Klay Thompson, and Flagg. And if the responsibilities prove too heavy early, it could hurt them. But if he finds success running the point, that would be massive. Even once Kyrie's back, having Flagg comfortable enough to initiate sets and take pressure off of others would still be a plus. Offensively, his responsibilities don't stop there though, because not only will he be tasked with bringing the ball up the floor, but he's going to be legitimately their secondary ball handler, pushing the tempo after defensive rebounds, running short pick and rolls, and serving as that connecting piece who makes the next pass and just keeps the offense flowing. He'll need to read rotating defenses, hit Klay or the cutters in rhythm, and make smart decisions out in transition. And then when he's off the ball, he has to confidently take those spot-up threes to help space the floor. That's going to be a big deal because Dallas are leaning heavily into size this season. They'll play a lot of jumbo lineups with Flagg at the 3, and with that comes tight spacing and limited shots inside. Last season, in the 9 games Anthony Davis actually played, the Mavericks were the worst 3-point shooting team in the NBA. They leaned very heavily into defense and physicality, which is absolutely fine, but the truth is, you're not going to win in today's NBA if you can't make shots from deep. So, Flagg's ability to knock down these threes could directly impact just how good the team really is. The good news is that late in his college career, he started showing real consistency from deep, and in his first preseason game and in the summer league, he was confidently knocking down some pull-up threes. And in that preseason game just gone, he had a lot of really impressive moments with the ball in his hand where he just made really timely and smart passes. Then there's the defensive side of the floor too, and this is where he could really take the Mavericks to another level. With Luka gone and Anthony Davis in, this is now a defensive team. Flagg's role is massive here. He's going to be the primary wing stopper, taking on the toughest forward/wing matchup on any given night. He'll also be a switch facilitator, allowing Jason Kidd to run a switch-heavy or zone schemes without worrying about mismatches, while also being a low-man helper, rotating behind the bigs to help protect the rim from the backside. Dallas is building something similar to the Boston Celtics defensive model. Everybody on the floor is at least 6'5", all interchangeable, and no weak links. Flagg fits that mold perfectly. If he can hit the ground running on that end, it'll elevate their defense immediately, and that's exactly why Flagg is going to be one of the biggest wildcard players coming into this NBA season. If he thrives with these responsibilities, the Mavericks could look like a real championship threat. But if he struggles to adjust early, they might just find themselves in trouble really fast. Now, let's move on to my next wildcard player ahead of this season, and that's going to be De'Aaron Fox. The Spurs just can't seem to catch a break. After an off-season surgery, Fox is now dealing with a new concern, a lingering hamstring injury that doesn't look like it's going away anytime anytime soon. During media day, he admitted that he's not going to be ready for opening night. That means he's missing all of training camp and the entire preseason, which is obviously a big problem for a Spurs team that was hoping to turn the corner. For San Antonio, this is a big setback. The Spurs are about to embark on hopefully their first playoff appearance since 2019, and Fox playing at his best is going to be a key part of that. But with their lead guard sidelined and expected to be cautious with the recovery, that postseason dream might already be slipping away before the season even begins. That said, if Fox can come back healthy and quickly build chemistry with the rest of the team on the fly, then there is still hope. The issue is that last season didn't give us a lot of confidence in that department. After the mid-season trade to land Fox, the Spurs really struggled to integrate him properly. Too often, he was just standing in the corners while the offense ran through others, which is wild when you've got an all-star guard on your team and you're barely using it. The coaching staff has to do a far better job of getting the ball into his hands far more often, running more sets that play to his strengths, and letting him dictate the pace. Where Fox could really swing this team's season is the potential two-man game with Victor Wembanyama. That pairing really could be special. One of those guard-to-big combinations that could define an offense. Now, we do have to be cautious with this kind of talk because we said similar things about Damian Lillard and Giannis after that blockbuster trade was made, but it just never panned out in Milwaukee. But with De'Aaron Fox and Victor Wembanyama, I genuinely think they have the tools to make it work. If that partnership takes off, it could easily be the centerpiece of everything the Spurs are going to do offensively this season, and it could be the difference between them making and missing the postseason. But if Fox's hamstring injury keeps him out longer than expected, or the coaching staff once again fails to properly integrate him, San Antonio could find themselves right back near the bottom, wasting another year of Victor Wembanyama's brilliance. That's why Fox is such a wild card this season, because if it all comes together, the Spurs could be a lot better than predicted. But if it doesn't, they could easily be on the outside looking in again, despite having a potential top 5 player in the NBA coming into this season with Victor Wembanyama. Now, coming in as my third wildcard player this season, I've got Kristaps Porzingis, now of the Atlanta Hawks. Porzingis is going to be one of the biggest swing factors in the league this season. When he's healthy, he's a massive regular season elevator. We're talking about a hyper-efficient 19 to 20 points per game on elite shooting splits, stretching the floor comfortably from a foot behind the arc and scoring better inside than ever. He's the kind of guy who can single-handedly bump a team up a tier in the standings. But the flip side is volatility. His game tends to dip when the matchups get physical. Those Miami, Minnesota, Orlando type defenses. Teams that really try and body him up and take him out of rhythm. And oftentimes, it does work. That's one of the reasons why he is a true wild card. But it isn't the biggest, because the biggest swing factor for Atlanta is going to be his fit with Trae Young. KP's never played with a point guard like Trae, a true pick and roll maestro who can feed him easier looks. Expect a lot of deep pick and pops, trail threes, and high-low seals where Trae Young's playmaking can get him the ball. Those two together should be a foul-drawing nightmare for opponents. And now that he's not sharing touches with other stars like Tatum or Brown, his volume could tick up to 7 or 8 threes a night without breaking the team's overall offensive flow. Then defensively, he's going to be the anchor. His rim protection is legit. He deters shots at the rim, but he just isn't built for switching. Boston covered that with elite guards and wings. So Atlanta will need to tweak their schemes on that end. The key will be containing dribble penetration so he can stay near the basket. Pairing him with someone like a Jalen Johnson, who's more versatile and mobile, helps cover that gap, along with one of the best defensive players in the NBA with Dyson Daniels. But the biggest concern for Kristaps Porzingis is always health. Porzingis hasn't had a clean bill of health in years. Boston managed his minutes carefully, often sitting him on back-to-back nights nights, and Atlanta are going to need to do the same thing. You're realistically hoping for 60 games, not 75. If the Hawks can handle that well and have a plan for when he's not available, maybe some more Onyeka Okongwu minutes or 5-out looks with Jalen Johnson, they should be fine. But when he is on the floor and healthy, he undoubtedly changes everything for the Hawks. He gives Atlanta elite floor spacing at the 5, a real option next to Trey, and the rim protection they've been missing for years. That's why he's such a wild card. If he's right physically and the Hawks build the right schemes around him, they can go from play-in territory to a top 4 seed with real upset potential. If not, you'll feel that variance very quickly. And this is basically the full Kristaps Porzingis experience in a nutshell, and Atlanta need to navigate this carefully this coming season. Now, let's move on to my 4th wildcard player for the season, Lonzo Ball of the Cleveland Cavaliers. Lonzo really could change the ceiling of what this Cavs team already is. Most people already have Cleveland as the favorite to grab the 1 seed in the East and to reach the NBA Finals, especially now that both the Pacers and the Celtics are out of the picture. But when you look at the roster, one thing they really could still use is more defense at the point of attack and a steady ball handler coming off the bench. And that's exactly where Lonzo Ball comes in. Last season, Cleveland had Ty Jerome in that role, and he was incredible, nearly playing at a 6th Man of the Year level. He brought so much offensive balance to that second unit, showing an incredible ability to play with the ball in his hands while also being just as good without it. But now with Jerome in Memphis, Lonzo is essentially stepping into the same spot as the Cavaliers' new backup point guard. That's a lot of weight to carry for someone who's barely played over the last couple of years. And that's really the big thing with Lonzo, health. Maybe more than anybody else in the league. He's played just 35 games in the past 3 seasons, which makes it really hard to know what to expect from him. That's why he is such a wild card. If he can even get to 60 games this season, that would be huge for Cleveland. When he's at his best, he's a really good on-ball defender and a knockdown 3-point shooter, which at this stage of his career is basically his entire offensive diet. If he can't stay healthy though, the Cavaliers should be fine with Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland leading the way. But his absence would definitely limit their bench production. On the flip side though, if Lonzo stays healthy and finds real rhythm, this team could absolutely push in the mid-60s in win count yet again. I really think he could be that impactful. I think where Lonzo could make his biggest mark though is in the playoffs. He just feels like a postseason guy. When you think about his game, the defensive versatility, the high basketball IQ, the ability to space the floor off the catch, and his knack for pushing the pace and making plays in transition, it's just exactly what you want out of a guy in the postseason. Of course, given that injury history though, it's a fair call to wonder whether it's unrealistic to expect him to be available for 50 plus games and a full playoff run. But if he somehow can be, that would be a massive wild card for the Cleveland Cavaliers. A healthy Lonzo Ball could take an already great team and make them even better than anybody expects. Now, let's move on to my 5th wild card of this NBA season, Amen Thompson of the Houston Rockets. With Fred VanVleet sidelined, Houston suddenly has a massive ball handling void to fill, and that responsibility now falls on Kevin Durant and Amen Thompson. But considering Durant's age and offensive importance, you don't really want him taking on that point guard workload, having to use all of that extra energy throughout an 82-game season. For a 37-year-old who the Rockets need to be available in the postseason, the less wear and tear, the better. That means most of this creation is now going to fall on the shoulders of Amen Thompson. That's both exciting and terrifying. Amen's athleticism, defensive impact, rebounding, and passing instincts already make him one of the most intriguing young players in the league. I genuinely think he's already top 50 in the NBA right now, if not top 40. And yeah, I'll admit it, I've already bought his jersey this offseason because that's how high I am on him. His freakish athleticism, motor, and high basketball IQ make him Houston's most unique and versatile weapon. But those same skills also make him the biggest swing factor on the team, because if he thrives in this expanded role, the Rockets could absolutely stay in the Western Conference race and maybe get even better. But if he doesn't, their entire offensive structure could collapse. That's what makes him such a wild card. His offensive game is still raw. His ball handling can get loose, his decision making in the half court can be shaky, and his shooting limitations are well known. However, there's tons of long-term upside. But the problem is, Houston doesn't have enough time to sit around and wait. They need him to be good right now to keep them afloat while VanVleet is out. And that's the tricky part. This isn't a normal development situation. The Rockets aren't experimenting. They've gone all in on winning the championship right now. With an aging Kevin Durant on the roster, that's the only goal. There isn't a plan B here. Thompson can dominate through defense, rebounding, pace, and efficiency, doing all of the little connective things that makes the rest of the team so good. But Houston are relying on him to run the show, not being a guy who just glues everything together. That's what makes him their ultimate make or break player this season. It's really hard to imagine the Rockets winning the title without VanVleet, unless Thompson is truly ready for this moment. Now, let's move on to my 6th wildcard this season, Jimmy Butler of the Golden State Warriors. Coming into this season, I think it's pretty clear that Jimmy is the biggest swing factor player on the team. He completely reshaped the Warriors after his arrival last season, but there are still plenty of questions about how much he can elevate at this stage of his career, and whether or not he can stay healthy enough to do it. When Jimmy Butler joined Golden State, his impact was instant and undeniable. The Warriors went 23-7 with him in the lineup compared to 25-27 without him. That made everybody better, especially Steph Curry. When those two shared the floor, Steph's true shooting percentage jumped up by 6%, and he averaged 4 more points and an extra assist every game. That's the kind of presence that Jimmy brings. It's not as simple as just scoring and defense, but it's genuinely raising the level of the guys around him. I've said it before, but I really believe that Butler was the best thing to happen to Golden State since the arrival of Kevin Durant. He gives them a true secondary creator, something they were desperately lacking. Someone who can make plays, get to the line, and generate easy buckets inside, which is something the roster hasn't had in years. On top of that, he's still a reliable, switchable defensive player who brings toughness and leadership on both ends. But the big concern for Golden State is age. Steph is 38, Jimmy is 36, and Draymond will be 36 by the time the postseason rolls around. With that much experience comes durability questions. And that's another reason Jimmy is such a wild card. He hasn't been available for 65 games in a season since 2019. And if he misses significant time again, that could derail everything. In a brutal Western Conference, where depth and availability matter more than ever, the Warriors can't afford to lose him for long stretches. Jimmy's reliability is the ultimate swing factor. If he can stay healthy and play at a near all-NBA level, the Warriors can absolutely contend. But if he starts to slow down or misses an extended period, their ceiling drops dramatically. And yet, when you watch him, it's hard not to believe. Jimmy's one of the smartest and most unselfish stars in the game. A connective player who does all of the little things: cutting, rebounding, defending, hitting those mid-range jumpers, and coming through in the clutch. He's also still a difference maker defensively, using his strength, instincts, and IQ to disrupt plays and make life miserable for opposing wings. If Jimmy plays at the same level that he did last season, Golden State can win a playoff series or two. But if he elevates even a bit beyond that, then I believe they would win multiple series and maybe even be good enough to truly contend for the title. That is why Jimmy Butler is the ultimate wild card for the Warriors this season. Their championship hopes rest heavily on just how far he can take them. Now, coming in as my 7th wildcard player, I've got Jaden Ivey of the Detroit Pistons. Media Day really gave us a good insight to just where Ivey's at. And honestly, it's a completely different place from a year ago. He missed a ton of time last season because of that brutal leg injury. But before going down, he appeared to be the Pistons' clear-cut secondary star in the backcourt. He was giving them close to 20 points a game on over 40% shooting from deep, showing flashes of becoming the exact kind of scorer and athlete this team needs to go alongside Cade Cunningham. Now he's back, fully healthy, and the team says he's a full go. No restrictions. That alone raises Detroit's ceiling. What's really exciting is how intentional the offseason work has been. Ivey said he spent the summer targeting the one big hole in his game, the in-between area. He focused on building out his mid-range pull-up package, improving his pacing, and making better reads out of the pick and roll. He even studied guards like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Donovan Mitchell to try and figure out just how they slow the game down, read defenders, and dictate tempo. These are massive steps forward because that mid-range and pacing has always been the root for his other struggles, finishing through contact, limiting turnovers, and improving his playmaking. If that part of his game pops, everything else is going to open up. The jumper already looks legit as well. As I mentioned, he shot around 40% from deep last season, and he's hoping to stay in that 37 to 40% range, but this time on even higher volume. If that can hold while his mid-range jumper improves, his scoring efficiency could take a massive leap this season. There's also been real growth in his decision making. Ivey said he studied Dennis Schroeder's playoff minutes to learn about the pace and control, just how to run the offense, make the right reads, and slow the game down when needed. If he can pair that composure with his burst, Detroit suddenly gets a secondary organizer next to Cade Cunningham. Head coach JB Bickerstaff also made another interesting point. He pushed back on the idea that the team only took off after Ivey's injury last season, saying that it was more about Asur Thompson finally getting healthy. He actually expects that Jaden Ivey and Asur Thompson together will be one of the Pistons' biggest weapons this season. An explosive, fast, athletic tandem that pressures teams in transition and keeps defenses scrambling on offense. If all of that offseason work translates, he remains a legitimate three-point shooter and becomes a secondary playmaker who can unlock Cade, Asur, and Jalen Duren, then Detroit's half-court offense gets way more efficient without sacrificing spacing. And if the Ivey-Asur Thompson pairing really clicks in transition, this team could suddenly become one of the fastest, most dangerous young squads in the NBA. If Ivey can prove that he fits this new Detroit team and can really build some chemistry with Asur Thompson early in the season, then Jaden Ivey would be a massive part of their success. But if not, he could find himself on the trading block. So not only is he a massive swing factor for Detroit's success, but this season could also be a turning point in his career depending on which way it goes. Now, coming in as my 8th wildcard player for the season, I've got Kevin Porter Jr. of the Milwaukee Bucks. He's been a bit of an afterthought in most conversations about the Bucks this offseason, but if you actually followed the team closely last year, you'll know that KPJ wasn't just solid, he was incredible. His production off the bench was genuinely impressive, giving the team 11.7 points per game on 55% effective field goal shooting, and he was able to do that in just 20 minutes per game. That is absurd efficiency and impact for a guy playing in such a limited role, and that's why there's real buzz inside Milwaukee about just what he could do this year. This season, Porter Jr. has been named the team's starting point guard, even though with their new system, Giannis is likely going to handle the majority of the playmaking. This will see KPJ filling in as that secondary option, initiating the offense at times, spacing the floor, and attacking when defenses collapse on Giannis. The chemistry between those two was undeniable last season as well. When Kevin Porter Jr. and Giannis shared the floor, Milwaukee had a plus 20.1 net rating with a 125 offensive rating and a 104.9 defensive rating, all of which are fantastic numbers. But here's the catch. As exciting as that upside is, Porter Jr. still isn't a completely stable option. It's fair to wonder if last season's efficiency was truly sustainable or if it was a hot stretch. He's a bit of a streaky player, and if he goes through a real bad shooting slump, I'm curious just how long his leash will be, because Milwaukee have other guards like Ryan Rollins and Cole Anthony who'll be pushing for those starting point guard minutes. And if either of them catches fire while KPJ struggles, then I don't think there's going to be any guarantee that Kevin Porter Jr. will stay in that starting role. His scoring style also adds another layer to it. A lot of his buckets come from those long mid-range jumpers, which in today's NBA, you'd rather see be turned into threes. The problem is, that hasn't really been a strength of his, especially off the dribble. Where he's shown promise before though, is as a spot-up shooter. shooter. Back in Houston, he was actually one of the best catch-and-shoot guys in the whole league from 3. And Milwaukee desperately needs him to get back to that form to help space the floor around Giannis. If the three-point jumper isn't falling at a good enough clip and he goes back to taking those long two-point jumpers, I just wonder how good of an offense you can truly have if your secondary scoring option is Kevin Porter Jr. taking long mid-range twos. If KPJ isn't making the threes at a good enough rate, I think things could really go south pretty quick. The Bucks want to play faster this year with more shared action, and if Kevin Porter Jr. isn't fitting into that flow, the whole system could start to crumble. And if that happens, the chances of the Bucks being a real threat in the East could fade pretty fast. But on the flip side, if Kevin Porter Jr. delivers close to 20 points per game, keeps the ball moving, and is consistently knocking down shots from deep, then there's no reason why Milwaukee couldn't earn themselves home court playoffs. So much of their success depends on what kind of KPJ they get this season. He is the definition of a wild card, and if you want to hear the deeper dive on just what Milwaukee is building around Giannis and Kevin Porter Jr., then you can check out my full Bucks breakdown right now.